Good afternoon, and welcome to the Democratic State Senate candidate debate hosted by Springfield Tech Community College. My name is Ira Rubenthal. I'm the president of the college, and I want to welcome you. This, I'm sure, will be a lively debate, and we're interested in hosting this because we have 7,000 students and 800 faculty and staff who are interested in the outcome of this race, as we are interested in the legislative process because, among other things, we're funded by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, so the legislature is very, very important to us. Let me do a shout out to Veritas College Preparatory School, Veritas, who are joining us today. And as I understand, they walked from the South End here, and they are studying government, so this is very appropriate for them. Let me just very quickly mention the 5 candidates and turn it over to our host. So, let's see. Aaron Saunders to my right, Eric Lesser, Tom Lachiusa, James Chip Harrington, and Tim Allen. And let me introduce Jim Madigan, who I'm sure you all know from television, Director of Public Affairs for WGBY, will be our host and moderator this afternoon. Jim.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Thanks for the honor of being invited to be here at STCC for this great event. Now, you have quickly and briefly met the candidates for the Democratic nomination, but there will also be, I believe, an independent on the ballot, but there is going to be a Republican on the ballot in November, which one of these gentlemen will be facing. She is here with us and is going to attend the debate and is not going to participate, but she's going to be taking a lot of notes, so be careful what you say, gentlemen. She is Deb Baranski, and she will be on the ballot in November, and we are very pleased to have her and to acknowledge her attendance. Deb, thank you very much. Now, Deb kind of disappears and goes down to the audience. Thank you. Let's get on to our debate. Quickly, no opening or closing statements, no strict set time limits for the candidates' responses. My job to try and keep things as even as equal as possible and to give each candidate a fair amount of time. I'm going to allow comment and rebuttal on each question as need be. After about an hour of my questions, we're going to open it up to the audience. We'll ask you to go to one of 2 microphones that are available so everyone here and at home can hear you. One of the microphones you can see right down here more or less in front of me. And I believe the second microphone is up in the area for access. So anybody should be able to get there if you have a question. You won't be seen on TV, but you will be heard. So let's move on now. The order in which the candidates will speak will rotate with each question, starting with them in alphabetical order for the first question. Obviously goes first to Mr. Allen. Let's get started. Gentlemen, I've looked at websites, I've looked at mailings, and it strikes me there's not an awful lot of difference between 5 progressive to moderate Democrats on policy issues. So to some extent, it's going to be about what do people think of you as individuals. Take a moment, tell us why you for the first Hampden, Hampshire District State Senate seat. Mr. Allen.
Why me? I have a lifelong resident of Springfield. I learned the value of hard work at my grandfather's company, Liberty Ice and Fuel Company on Liberty Street. The lessons I learned there I applied with me in a 27-year career in leadership at Mass Mutual. So I've got time in the private sector. I then went to the public sector, worked in nonprofits for a few years, and recently on the city council in Springfield. I think consistently I've been able to bring people together to produce results. At Mass Mutual, managing projects, over 100 projects over 20 years. In the city council, fighting against the biomass plant, reopening the libraries, fighting for jobs, to keep jobs in Springfield at Tightflex, to create jobs at Smith & Wesson, hundreds of jobs. I've consistently been able to bring people together. I think my background of private sector and public sector shows that. I've been successful in those places. And the ability to bring some people together and talk about diverse points of view, et cetera, is something we need in a state senator, someone who can bring people together to discuss things, discuss both points of view, and achieve results. So I think that background gives me the experience from understanding different points of view. It gives me the experience to solve problems. And I'm ready to fight and win for Western Massachusetts.
Thank you, sir. Chip Harrington.
First, I want to thank STIC for putting this forum together. It's very much appreciated as we are so close to the election. And I want to thank the students from the Veritas School for being here. It's wonderful that you guys are participating in this. I'm running for the seat for several different reasons. As Mr. Allen said, I've got a pretty diverse business background and professional background in the public sector as well, just as he does. I'm a small business owner. I'm a school committee member for the town of Ludlow. I've been involved in the school committee for the past 10 years. And I'm also a part-time police officer. I've been doing that for several years. Prior to that, I worked in the field of corrections. I've got a pretty long, extensive field in law enforcement. But the thing I'm most proud of has been running my own business for the past 11 years. It's given me a very unique perspective on Massachusetts and how small business is perceived in Massachusetts. And I think we have a long way to go to improve our perception rating in Massachusetts with small business. My wife, Noelle, we've been married for 20 years. She's a nurse at Bay State Medical. I graduated high school with her from Ludlow High School in 1986, which half these kids weren't even thought at that point. But I've been working my entire life here in the western part of the state. As I said, I worked in the corrections field. When my wife and I first started having our family, my son Connor, who's 19 years old, recently joined the Air Force and is now stationed in Japan, serving our country, and we're very, very proud of him. My daughter is a junior at Ludlow High School, a student athlete, and wants to be a school teacher. And she wants to reside here in western Massachusetts because she loves it here, just as her mom and I do. The one thing that I feel that sets me apart from everybody else here is that I believe a good idea is a good idea, regardless of whether you're a Democrat, a Republican, an independent, or where you come from. I believe the priority for this district needs to be western Massachusetts and the city of Springfield. And if the city of Springfield succeeds, the entire region succeeds. I live in Ludlow, but my friends in Wilbraham and Longmeadow and Granby and Belchertown all feel the same way, that if Springfield grows and prospers, then the suburbs do the same. And we have a problem right now with public safety in the city of Springfield. We have a problem with public safety, quite frankly, everywhere. But the perception is worse than the reality. We need to put 50 more police officers on the street of the city of Springfield tomorrow. That does several things. Number one, it does provide more public safety.
Mr. Harrington, if I may, I apologize for interrupting. We're trying to keep this right now on you, and I think you've done that. We'll be getting to, I think, everything you mentioned as we move on. Do you want to summarize, or are you set?
I'll just summarize very, very quickly. I've been here my whole life. I love this region. I have a lot of passion for this area, and I look forward to your support on September 9th.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Lachiusa.
Yes, good afternoon, and it's great to see all you students here. That's one of the things that concerns me about our changes we're making in the educational system, is it's difficult for students to understand the importance of civic events, to be part of something like this, to actually vote. We're concerned about the number of people that are actually going to go to the voting polls this Tuesday, but this is a good start. I'm glad to see you here. When I think about the difference between myself and the rest of the community, you know, in terms of the diversity and working in diverse cultural settings, I'm the only candidate who's worked in this neighborhood. I worked right up the street at Mason Square, W.W. Johnson. I worked for Thelma Scott, and I'd give a shout out to Thelma. I hope she's listening to this. I haven't seen her in a while. But Thelma had a great quote on her wall at W.W. Johnson. And part of it is that a man may not get everything he works for in this life, but he certainly works for everything he gets. Now, as students, I hope you know who wrote that. That was Frederick Douglass. And I went to Frederick Douglass Junior High School in Rochester, New York. But I'm working this campaign, and I may not get everything I want out of this campaign. But, you know, I've certainly been working hard, and my dedication is to the city of Springfield and the whole district. But when I look at the African-American community, you know, when I worked at W.W. Johnson, I picked up a saying that real knows real. And, you know, I'm the real thing. You know, I also lived in the North End on Calhoun Street and worked for Gandara up there. I now work in a multicultural setting. Mr. Herring said he's a part-time police officer for last year. And I work in the jail. And so I help men and women, mostly men, get their lives back on track when they end up in jail. I've committed my life to serve other people. The work I do at the jail is mostly anger management and domestic violence reduction. I'm wearing a white ribbon here, which means that I've taken a vow to say that I will not be violent towards women, and that I will promote the idea that we should have zero violence in our relationships with women as men. And the only way men address that issue is by talking to other men. And so I've been doing that for 18 years. The other part is that, I've been active in the community in terms of the Longmeadow Democratic Town Committee. And for those of you in the audience who are interested in getting involved in politics, I would suggest getting involved in your town committee and finding out what's going on, going to different political events. Now, the big difference between me is that I have areas of expertise and knowledge in mental health and in violence prevention. Some of you have to write papers for school, and you probably think, boy, this is a pain in the neck. But this year, I had an article published on hostility reduction groups, and this is published in a journal called The New Social Worker at socialworker.com. And you can also get in touch with it by going to my website, which is tomlachiusa.com. And the skills you're learning at school are things that are going to help you later in life. And you never know. Maybe one of you will run for political office. But what I bring to the table is a person with expertise in mental health and violence. I run my own business in Springfield or in Longmeadow as a social worker doing private practice, and I work at the jail right now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Lachiusa. Mr. Lesser, why you?
Thank you so much, Jim, and thank you to everybody for coming today in the closing days of this election. It's exciting to see so many people here, especially such a great group of students. It's great to be here. My father, who's here today, went from driving a cab to treating patients, and he taught me that if you work hard and keep your head down, anything is possible. But we all know that promise, that opportunity to work your way into the middle class has been breaking down in Western Massachusetts. We can't settle for the old way of doing things. After college, I went to work for President Obama. I worked for him for 4 years, and I learned there just how hard you have to push to get things done. I have a 14-month-old daughter now, Rose. She's not here because it's actually around her nap time, but my wife, Allison, is here. I want her to grow up here in Western Massachusetts just like I did, because it's a great place to grow up. We know that. But we also know that our families are leaving. The UMass Donahue Institute said 28,000 people will leave the greater Springfield area just in the next 15 years. And the reason people are leaving is because there's not enough jobs. There isn't enough opportunity. But we can change that. High-speed rail, high-tech manufacturing, investing in our infrastructure. Those are the things that we need to do to be competitive, to get ahead. Better connecting our economy here in Springfield with the growing economies all around us. We can do those things, but it's not going to happen if we do the same old thing we've always done. It's not going to happen if we stick with the same kind of politics we've always stuck with. It's time to shake things up. It's time for a change. So I'll conclude. I know this is just the introduction. My name is Eric Lesser. I'm excited to be here, and I'm excited to work with you on that change.
Mr. Saunders.
Thank you, Jim, and thank you, President Rubenstahl, for hosting us here today. Jim, you asked the central question in this campaign, which is experience. The great ideas that the people up here have, and make no doubt about it, we have 5 good people with good ideas up here, but they're just ideas right now. In order to be effective for Western Massachusetts, on Beacon Hill, you need to be able to hit the ground running and affect change that benefits us here. I spent 6 years as Senator Kondaris' chief of staff. I learned the State House, and that takes a long time. It could take you a year to figure out which way is up in that building. But what separates the good ideas from real change for Western Mass is experience. And it's the experience I offer not only in my role as Senator Kondaris' chief of staff, but in my 7 years on the Board of Selectmen in Ludlow, where I dealt firsthand with the issues that face our cities and towns, be it Ludlow, Springfield, Chicopee, Longmeadow, what have you. When we're faced with the question, well, there isn't enough money to put the extra 50 police officers on the street. There isn't enough money to make sure that our teachers are earning a good wage to keep them in the schools, continuing the great work that they do. Well, it comes to the people who are active and involved in elected local government. And my answer is that we need to reprioritize what we do with the money we have in Massachusetts. We need to put a focus on our communities to make sure that we have quality public safety, to make sure that we have quality public education, that our roads and bridges, which should be our top transportation priority, are in good repair. And I'll say this, we don't just send a resume to Boston. You send a person. And you send a person who you hope has the passion to do the job 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. And just for a moment, I want to tell you where my passion for this job comes from. Growing up, my father was a psychologist by trade. My mother, a teacher, 35 years, just retired this year. My father got diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. It was a particularly nasty form. And by the time I was 10, he was in a wheelchair. By the time I was 14, he was bedridden. He lost his practice. And my family found itself in a position that so many families today face: overwhelming medical bills, on the brink of losing their home, only for the bad luck of poor health. There were a lot of people in public service who fought for my family. And I want to go to Boston to repay that debt by fighting for the families who need that help today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. And I'm going to have to ride you a little bit more on time now because, believe it or not, we've already used up about a sixth of our total time right there. But it was important to hear what you had to say and to let you introduce yourselves. We have acknowledged the students who are here from Veritas Preparatory Charter School, and thrilled to have them. And they have submitted some questions, seventh graders, and they are terrific questions. Congratulations. You really are working hard and studying hard there. I'm going to use them because they are really good. And this next question will go first to Mr. Harrington in our rotation. The students say, what can you do about the dropout rates among the city's public schools? How can you turn dropouts away from crime after the fact? Mr. Harrington.
Excellent question, and something that we have been talking about on the campaign trail. I'm a member of the school committee in the town of Ludlow, as I mentioned earlier, and the one focus that we have been putting on in our school district is early childhood intervention and preschool, and getting to the young people at a much, much younger age than we're doing right now, putting an emphasis on preschool, full-day preschool. Studies have shown, and conclusively, I should say, that the longer somebody is in school, the earlier they're in school, the sooner you can have interventions, whether it's learning disability or just giving them a safe place to go. That's significant, and that needs to be a priority. And it's not happening in every school district in Massachusetts right now. So full-day preschool is a priority. When you talk about the crime and the issue of crime and students dropping out, it's real. As I mentioned, I worked in corrections for a long time, and I did a lot of counseling when I was there as well too. And almost everybody they worked with said the same thing, that they just wish they had that role model in their family. We've got so many families right now that are broken up, and single moms and single dads trying to raise people. It makes it very difficult. And I know the gang issue that we're dealing with in this region is significant and has been significant for many, many years. When you see some of these kids in these sad environments they're coming from, the gang almost becomes a new family. But obviously, it's the wrong kind of family. Incentivizing people to get to work and growing our economy is the only way we can really keep families together in this area and keep children in school and lowering our dropout rates. And our economy right now is not doing well in the western part of the state. The eastern part of the state and even Worcester is having a much better rebound than we are. We are still struggling in this area. So when we bring more jobs to this region, it creates more opportunity for families. But the only way to bring more jobs to this region is to, number one, put the emphasis on public safety. People want to feel safe in their city. Businesses want to feel safe. They want their employees to feel safe. That's how you grow an economy, and that's how families stay together. But there's programs out there like Awake in the city of Springfield that are run, and they're doing great work for people. They need more funding. They need more funding from the State House so that they can reach out to more children. And that's how you affect change, through getting to young people at a young age and incentivizing people to get to work so they can come home and provide for their own family.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Lachiusa, the dropout rate.
Well, Veritas. A lot of people are concerned about Veritas, but when they hear the truth, it isn't always that easy to swallow. Homework is probably a word you don't want to hear right now. I see some smiles, yes. But when we look at people's success in school, homework makes a huge difference. Now, the first 5 years of school, homework isn't really that important. I believe you're older than that. But once you get past 5th grade, homework is really what determines which people go to the top colleges. The schools that have more homework, believe it or not, put kids in the top schools. I've worked with children who've had trouble with school as a social worker for a long time. And every time I talk with a child who's having trouble in school, it's always the same thing. Oh, I get A's on all my tests, so I don't do my homework. Sound familiar? Homework is a big part of it. We look at, what can we do to make things more exciting for students in school? And one of the things that I would propose that I believe would work, and I've talked to people in school, is that people who have passed their PARCC exam and are on their way to graduation are ready to work when they're seniors. And I would propose that seniors in high school could work half of the day or do an internship half of the day and get that job experience that's going to help them for that first time in their life and get a little money, hopefully. I know I did it when I was in school, so it's not a new idea. But the first job experience children get is important. I started working when I was 14, maybe 13. I delivered papers. I learned about marketing. I learned about accounting. I had to talk with people about the delivery, and I had to do the work. And I think that a job is a big anchor for people who are having trouble. Only 1/3 of the people who graduate from high school go to college. So the other 2/3 really need to develop time for training. And so, we have a great vocational high school here in town, in the district, close to the district, but I think that school should be open in the evening for students who have gone to other high schools but maybe want to, become an auto mechanic, or maybe they want to learn about electronics and so forth, so they could have night classes in those schools. The taxpayers have already paid for all the equipment, and we could do that. And then as far as, violence, if we can reduce gang membership, that's going to reduce a lot of violence in school. And so I have a whole plan on how to do that also. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Lesser.
Thanks, Jim. This is a vitally, vitally important issue. We know that education is essential. We know the jobs of the future require a first-rate education, not just K through 12, but pre-K and after high school as well. I got my start fighting to improve schools. As a 16-year-old, there were budget cuts threatening more than 40 teacher positions at my high school, and I didn't think it was fair that 14 and 15-year-olds should have to bear the brunt of cuts and bad decisions made in Boston. So what did we do? We organized, and I'm proud that one of the teachers whose jobs we helped protect during that fight, Vivian Morris, is here today and has been part of this campaign, because we understand that the jobs of the future require a first-rate education. Why do people drop out of school? They drop out because they don't feel like staying in school is worth it, or they feel like they can't stay in school for a variety of reasons. So how do we solve that? We solve that by making it clear to students what's at stake in school and making sure that we give students the highest quality education that we can. The way we do that is connecting training and schooling to concrete job opportunities after people graduate. When people feel like they have a stake in their education, when people feel like if they put the work in and they graduate, they'll end up with a good job and an ability to build a good life, people stay in school. Recently, I took a tour here at STIC of the new high-tech manufacturing training center that was just recently opened. That is a great example, connecting people with the training they need to get employment right after they're done with their schooling. Those are the kinds of programs we need to focus on. Those are the kinds of programs we need to expand, and that's what I'll champion in the state Senate.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Saunders.
Thank you, Jim. So the question centrally is, why do kids drop out of school? And when you ask them, and this is something that is missing altogether too much in Boston right now, is that the answers always seem to come from a bureaucrat in Boston, when the answers really should be coming from the communities. But when you ask and you see the issues that our dropouts are having, more often than not, it's that the future that they see for themselves isn't improved by a high school diploma, or the high school diploma doesn't seem achievable. Now, the way that we address that is early education and early intervention, putting more of our education dollars into the classroom. Because, and I don't know if any of the young people in the audience have witnessed this yourself, but if you have when you were in 6th grade and had a classmate reading at a 3rd grade reading level, that's a tough 6 years to go. It is difficult for that young man or young woman to continue to move through the high school experience. Now, the other side of the question was its correlation to crime. And this happens. People get in trouble. One of the things that we have to be very careful about, especially with young people, especially with nonviolent offenders, is we don't send them into a criminal justice system that they cannot get out of. When you have a young nonviolent offender, especially if they're a high school dropout, the appropriate road for them is back to school and not in jail. And we got to make a real priority of diverting young nonviolent offenders from going into jail, where the recidivism rate is in the 80 percentile. That's unacceptable, because these are young lives who can lead productive futures, who should be leading our region for the next years. We can't afford for those young people to get cast off before they're even old enough to vote.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Allen, finally we get back to you. Your thoughts on this question.
Thank you, Jim. My background in education is sort of extensive, I would say. I spent, you guys are from the South End, at the Veritas School in the South End. I taught at Howard Street School in the South End a few years ago. My son, that was at the school that became Zanetti Montessori, and then moved to Lady Hope after the tornado. My son was principal of South End Middle School and is now principal of Birchland Park Middle School in East Longmeadow. He's married to his wife is principal of middle school of Glenbrook Middle School in Longmeadow. So I've got, and my wife is the head of the education department at Springfield College. My first degree was in early childhood education. So I've got a lot of education in my family and around me, a lot of professional educators. This thing starts with early education. I got my degree in early education 40 years ago, and I still believe in it now like I did then. My wife got her doctorate in it. People need early education to get started. Everybody needs it. Everybody recognizes it. We don't do it well enough as a society. We all talk about it. We don't do it. Only 45% of our kids are getting the early education that they need. If they get the early education they need, we need to scaffold them through the rest of the K through 12, et cetera. But at least if they start in kindergarten or first grade at the right place with 3,000 words they know rather than 600, they got a shot. It starts there because success breeds success. Once you feel good about yourself and feel like you're off and running, that breeds success. You will continue to excel. Other things, for people who aren't in that situation, we need to early in their elementary career or middle school career identify kids who need special attention, who might be falling off the rails a little bit and need a little extra help. We are very focused on double sessions of math and reading, et cetera, for MCAS. We can't lose focus, however, on activities and things and wraparound services that kids need to stay in school, things that are of interest to them and are relevant to them, that make their education relevant. There needs to be something along the line, in the path, in the future, that say, I want to get there, and this school's helping me get there, and I like coming. I like being here. The emphasis on standards-based testing and things like that need to be done, but we can't do it at the expense of activities in school to keep kids interested. That, of course, rolls into internships. I started an internship program and a mentoring program for kids in a dropout prevention thing in the Springfield Public Schools a few years ago. That program still exists, and I work with the internships and co-op programs in the Springfield Public Schools as we speak. So those are the things I would do in order to keep kids in school.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Question 3 will go first to Mr. Lachiusa Lachiusa, excuse me. And let me just say, you guys from Veritas Prep have made my job so easy today. Let's go with another one of your questions. It's a great question. Too many young kids have guns. How are you going to help stop gun violence?
Well, my main response to this is that people who own guns need to keep them locked up safely. And I would propose that we could have gun safes available. If any of you have guns in your home and they are not locked up in a safe, then there's a problem. And people need to do that. And I think we could, even at Putnam High School, we could make gun safes there and sell them to people in the community for a very low rate. A lot of the guns do come from out of state, and I know that. And people can even buy guns online. So, you know, we have gun buyback programs and so forth, but really, I work in the jail, and when I talk to inmates who become drug dealers, they start off selling like marijuana, and they think it isn't a big deal, but then they get robbed, and so then they buy guns, and they have guns. And so this is the thing, is we have to look at addressing the drug problem. We have a big problem with illegal drugs, and marijuana is like the tip of the iceberg. We have a lot of people who are dying of heroin addiction. And so as state senators, you know, we need to have a plan, and I do have a 5-point plan to reduce, you know, children getting involved in drugs. We've done a great job of reducing the number of people who smoke cigarettes. And, you know, my plan is to do the same thing with alcohol, with drugs, you know, with light drugs. You know, I just think that people, you know, there's values that we have to have about life. And we should be able to enjoy life in a natural state. I talk to people who would go to Six Flags and they would need to drink. Why they're at a place like that? That makes no sense to me. When you're having fun, you should just have fun, and you should be sober doing it. So, you know, I think the connection between drugs and guns is important, and so my advice to you young people is to stay drug-free, and, you know, people who become habitual users of drugs are going to end up in situations where guns are involved, and so that's the best way for people to avoid it. And, you know, the state senate is going to continue to work on this problem and try to, you know, eliminate guns coming into the state. But, you know, your job is just to try to avoid that in your neighborhoods. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Lesser.
Thanks, Jim. You know, the issue of guns and crime is essential for our area, and something that we need to take on with urgency because it's a very, very urgent problem. A couple of observations. Over the last several months, I've taken the time to meet with law enforcement officials locally in local communities across our district, across Western Massachusetts, and there's a lot of innovative programs. For example, the Badge Unit in Forest Park that's had a lot of success reducing crime. We have a new police commissioner who's taking this on very aggressively. If I'm in the state senate, I'm going to have the backs of those officials who are working on the ground every single day, our ministers, our community leaders, our police, our local leaders, to make sure that they have the resources that they need, that they have the strong voice they need advocating for them at the State House. So improving and expanding and having the backs of our collaborative and innovative policing programs is very, very important. Another thing we need to do is we need to take on the heroin addiction epidemic. We know a lot of the violence is fueled by drugs. We also know that the heroin epidemic is directly linked to a flood of prescription pills that are filling our streets and flooding our neighborhoods, especially among young people. We need to take this on. I was the first candidate to put out a comprehensive 4-point plan on this issue, things the legislature can do right now to take on the heroin addiction epidemic and make sure that we're giving people treatment options and reducing dependence. Finally, we need to take on illegal guns. A bill was just passed that Governor Patrick signed that is a good bill. I would have been an enthusiastic supporter of it if I was there. We need to take on illegal guns. We need to crack down on straw purchases. We need to get those guns off the street. And again, it starts locally and having the backs of local officials, local leaders working on it. We also have to acknowledge that crime and gun violence is related to a much bigger issue that we also need to take on, and that is an economy that is not creating opportunity, enough opportunity for enough people. When people feel like they have a stake in their future, When people feel like they can get a good job and provide for their families, they don't commit crime. So what we need to do is take on the crime issue head on, and then we need to focus on the big things we need to do to get our economy moving. High-tech jobs, high-speed rail, that's what I'll be focusing on as well. Thank you.
Mr. Saunders.
Thank you. That's in some ways, it's a sad question to have to answer. Too many kids have guns. It starts from the bottom up, because the Senate passed laws, and they do that. Eric mentioned one that was passed a couple weeks ago. There are a lot of gun laws on the books. But when I think of that question, what I think about is, what do we have to do to keep that gun from getting in that kid's hand in the first place? Because by the time that arrest happens, by the time, God forbid, that violent crime occurs, it's too late. It's too late. We haven't done our jobs. My focus is on keeping the guns out of the kids' hands to begin with. Part of that is enforcement. And sadly, Washington has failed us with comprehensive gun reform. Because Massachusetts, we can pass all the laws that we want, and we can't stop someone from going up to Vermont, buying whatever guns they want, and bringing them back. And the state police, they do a good job trying to pull as many of them off them as they can, but you can't pull over every car, nor should you. So when we look to take this problem on, I want to start in the neighborhoods. I want to be a partner with not only the city leaders, but the people in the neighborhoods who care about their safety, their well-being, the quality of life that they have, to take those guns off the street, to set an example that it's not acceptable to have them in the first place. Now, you can't legislate that. There's no plan or bill that I could provide to tell you that. It's just hard work. And it takes a lot of cooperation, and that hard work has to come from an awful lot of people. But I look forward to taking that challenge on, because it's one of the biggest we face.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Allen.
Thanks, Jim. This is an issue that everybody wishes they could solve, and nobody has really figured out how to do it. And it hit home really recently with me. The area of Springfield that I represent on the city council is East Forest Park, Allen Cooley, Outer Belt, 16 acres. And we had a murder a week ago Thursday night. We had a murder in a parking lot near McDonald's. Doesn't appear that it was at McDonald's. And if there's anything to personalize this more than that, it's only, I guess, if the victim is someone you know. I didn't know the victim, but I did meet his parents the night before last at a neighborhood meeting to discuss many things. It was a regular neighborhood meeting, but we had invited the commissioner of police to come, and he couldn't come because the investigation is still too close. But while the neighbors were there, as a meeting I typically attend, I met the parents and saw the look in their eyes, and saw that reflected in my eyes that I, as an elected official, need to be taking hold of this issue even more than I have. What have I done so far? Well, I went to District Attorney Mastriani with Councilor Mike Fenton 2 years ago, and asked him to establish a gun court so that all gun crimes, like in Suffolk County in Boston, were processed by the same group of people. Gun courts are found to be fairly effective, and at least focusing the number of people involved in enforcing the court decisions on guns, et cetera. That was done on a limited basis, I believe 1 or 2 days a week. What else have I done? I see every week, Mr. Harrington talks about adding 50 police officers. We talk about that every year in the city budget. Every year we want to add police officers. We would love to do it, but we have two issues. One is there's not enough money, and we need to figure it out. We've been trying to get help from Boston. We've been trying to figure out money in our budget, but we have the same issue everybody has with your own budgets at home and with our governmental budgets. Prioritization. Where can we find the money? We've run a couple of police academies. We have been able to keep our police in Springfield at a level which we feel is a decent level. Would we like to have more police? Yes. If we had more police, would we have stopped that murder at 2 a.m. In the parking lot at Bicentennial Plaza? I would say not likely. The issues that cause that to happen are deeper. And while I'd love to have more police, and I would vote for more police, we need things like the Violence Prevention Task Force, which I started again with 3 friends of mine, Tony Petaway, Daryl Moss, and Gianna Allentuck. 4 years ago, we put the Violence Prevention Task Force back together. 25 people meet every month every Tuesday, one Tuesday every month, and talk about the programs we can develop in Springfield to engage people, to share and collaborate with each other, to get kids into programs that will help them and benefit them in their lives so guns won't become the option that they have become.
Thank you very much, sir. Mr. Harrington.
You know, and as I mentioned before, I'm a part-time police officer. There's nothing more frustrating for a police officer who goes out there and makes an arrest. That person goes before the judge, and then he or she's back on the street. We need to enforce the laws that we have on the books right now. We are one of the toughest states in the entire nation when it comes to gun and gun control and gun laws. We need our judges to enforce the laws that we have. We can make all the laws that we want, but if it's not going to be enforced, then it's not going to have an effect. If there's a mandatory sentencing with a gun crime, then that should be enforced. That person should be sitting behind bars. They're a dangerous person. If somebody gets their hands on an illegal gun and they commit a crime with it, they're a dangerous person. They need to be off the street. We need to stop putting people in jail who are dealing with opiate addictions and focus on people who are really dangerous, violent crimes. I'm a gun owner. As I mentioned, I'm a police officer. My gun is locked up when I'm not on duty with a trigger lock on it. Those are responsible gun owners. There's thousands and thousands of us out there. This issue goes way beyond just the gun itself. It goes beyond, or it goes to the federal government, state government, and a local government working together. We cannot expect the city police officers in the city of Springfield or the town of Longmeadow, wherever it might be, to enforce this law. This has to be worked on from the federal government to the state government, right down to the local government. And as much as we like to think that everybody's working together, they're not. As we mentioned before, there are guns in the state of Vermont that are being brought and coming down to the city of Springfield and being sold on the street illegally, bought legally, sold illegally. That is a border issue that we need to deal with. That's a federal issue. If our legislature can work with this legislator in this state of Vermont, we'll do that, and I will certainly foster that. But it comes down to a priority. Are we going to prioritize? I do think that 50 more police officers do make a difference, and I do think the city of Springfield needs to prioritize that. That's more important than the city council getting a pay raise, or more important than raising trash fees. We need to put police officers on the street so people feel safe in what they're doing, and people feel safe in going to work and going out and enjoying a night out in the city of Springfield. That's a priority. You can talk like, well, we want to do it, we got to try to do it. No, you got to do it. You got to prioritize. And you got to look at your budget, and you got to find out what's the most important part of the budget. Right now, it's public safety, and guns and drugs are a big part of that. So it's many layers on this. Federal, state, and local government need to work together. And as your next state senator, I'm going to be championing that issue with dealing with our congressional delegation as well.
Thank you, sir. Our next question goes first to Mr. Lesser. It's a two-parter, part from me and part from our students. I want to know where you stand on ballot question 3, the referendum to repeal the casino law. And the students said, in the better part of the question, I got to admit, around this country, casinos have overrun many communities. If a casino is allowed in Springfield, would you allow it to overrun our community?
Great question. Jim, I will vote no in November on the ballot on question 3. And just to clarify, because they wrote it in a very confusing way, no means that I support keeping the casino process moving forward the way it has. And the reason is this. I don't think it's fair to give Eastern Massachusetts veto power over decisions that have already been made locally here in Western Massachusetts. We might have some skepticism about a casino, but a process was followed, Springfield had its vote, and the casino, I think, is a local issue that the people of Western Massachusetts should decide because it's going to impact us. 85% of the population is located in the Boston area. If we open this up to a statewide referendum, we set a very dangerous precedent, which is that Eastern Massachusetts gets to make decisions about local issues here in Western Massachusetts. And to address the students' very, very important concern about the casino economy, I will be very, very tough on MGM. They made a lot of promises to the people of Springfield and to the wider region in order to get this casino license, and I will hold their feet to the fire. As a state senator, we will have oversight responsibility over the casino law. My feeling is let's get this in, let's get the construction jobs, let's get the other jobs that we need to give ourselves a little bit of a boost, and then let's turn our attention to all the big things that we need to do to really create middle-class growth here in Western Mass, here in Springfield. And the way we do that, the way we create that long-term growth is by investing in our infrastructure, high-speed rail, improving education, fostering more high-tech manufacturing. Those are the big long-term things that I want to focus on in terms of economic development, not casino long-term.
Mr. Saunders.
Thank you, Jim. So I'm in favor of the casino. The thousands of construction jobs are a step in the right direction for the city as part of a larger economic development plan. And we read about it yesterday with the investment in the Morgan Square apartments. If you drive down Boston Road, it's a whole lot nicer of a ride than it was just a couple months ago. And Union Station being another one of these projects that is a larger plan for economic development in the city of Springfield that's been laid out by people who've been really working their tails off for a good number of years. Now, that question about overrunning the city, you could have been in the room when this law was being written, because that was the central question that we were asking ourselves when the law was being put together. How do we avoid the mistakes that we've seen elsewhere, where a casino has tremendous negative impacts on the community? And we studied each and every one of these locations. And in response, part of the casino law that stands now is that $50 million a year has to be put back into local regional vendors. That's $50 million more going into the mom and pop shops, the small businesses here in the region. We put additional funding into gambling addiction treatment. More money because of the casino bill than we've ever had. And I'll tell you, gambling addiction is real. It affects a lot of families. And we don't always see it as gambling addiction. We see it as domestic violence. We see it as foreclosures. We see it as lost jobs. These are some of the things that were taken into consideration years ago with that exact question in mind. And it's important that the next state senator stand firm to enforce that. Because words on a piece of paper in Boston don't mean a whole lot if you don't have someone who's familiar with the law, who's going to be there, stand up, and be ahead of the curve.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Allen.
Thanks, Jim. I was on the, being a member of the City Council, I was able to be named, or I was named to the Casino Site Committee. So I attended many meetings over a 15-month period where everybody who had a perspective on the casino came and presented to us. I was part of the process in terms of approving the host community agreement that came from the mayor, which recommended MGM. I've worked with the MGM people for over 2 years at this point and have built relationships with many of them. I support the casino. I was told I was the toughest yes vote. I was told that I was the best city councilor by a law firm that came in from Chicago to help us, that he said, I've been doing this for 20 years. I never saw anybody know as much about this issue on any city council as you do. I asked 50 questions of the 60 that were asked by the city council. So I know the issue, and I worked hard at it. I see the economic benefits of it. But the casino is only part of a plan. It's not plan A, it's not plan B, it's part of a plan. There isn't a plan A and a plan B. We need to have a plan for growing Springfield. One of the reasons that I support the casino is the jobs that were just mentioned by other peers of mine down the line here, and also the money that's available for the community through taxes and for vendors, et cetera. So $1 million a week is going to be spent by the casino in getting services and products into the casino. Let's look already at what has happened with the casino. We've got a new hotel being built on Columbus Avenue. We've got police investing $8 million in a big development on Columbus Avenue just down the way from the casino. And we have a new car wash there. In the last year, we've seen 3 new businesses. But the last point I'd like to make there is people are not afraid of the casino. People are investing there. And the other thing we need to invest in is our other parts of the plan, which on my website, you'll see my economic development plan, which includes investing in early education, which includes precision manufacturing, healthcare, and which includes business incentives, something I've been involved with many other businesses in Springfield, which we need to continue to do to bring more business to Springfield. Thank you.
Mr. Harrington.
I do not consider myself to be a very enthusiastic supporter of casinos. I will be voting to support the city of Springfield and their endeavor for 2 reasons. One, I feel that the city has played by the rules, and so has an MGM up to this point. So we shouldn't be pulling the rug out from under them at this point. I say I'm not a very enthusiastic supporter because I think that the legislation right from the get-go was flawed. I think 3 casinos in Massachusetts is oversaturation. And I believe that was an attempt to, appease the legislature by spreading that out throughout the state. But when you consider the fact that Connecticut, just below us, has two of the largest casinos in America, and they're both struggling, and New York State and also New Hampshire are moving towards casinos, it just seems like oversaturation. The part I do like about the Springfield Casino is that it incorporates existing structures. So they're not going to be just knocking everything down and building new. It's going to utilize the Mass Mutual Center. It's going to utilize the armory that we have out here as far as a destination, plus the Hall of Fame. And with Six Flags across the river, I do see that there is some potential support there. So I'm going to support it for that reason. I think the overarching question right now is that what happens in November? If this gets defeated in November, what does the state of Massachusetts do? And I think that if this casino bill does get defeated November 4th, then that's it. You don't move forward. I think if the people have spoken and they decide to move against the referendum against casinos, then that's it. That's democracy. The majority of people have spoken. They're not in favor of it. So we move on to something else. If they're in support of it, then I'm on board. And as the state senator, I'm going to be holding MGM accountable for everything that they're promising right now, because they are promising quite a bit. And I'm concerned that it's only a 7-year plan. I'm concerned that 7 years down the road, what does our small business community look like? We've already seen one effect from that. A small business recently couldn't negotiate a deal with their landlord because the landlord's thinking that there's more money coming in when the casino comes around the corner. So that's one small business that's already closed up because they couldn't negotiate a deal because they couldn't afford to pay the rent. So as a small business owner myself, I'm very cognizant of our business community. They need to be supported. But I'm a supporter, and I want to support the city of Springfield and make this work if the state supports the referendum.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Lachiusa.
Well, in our life, we think about what is it that keeps us going? And each one of you sitting in the seats has a dream that keeps you going. If you don't have a dream that keeps you going, you're kind of in trouble. And so when I look at Springfield, right now, Springfield's dream is that they're going to turn things around. Their dream is that people are going to come here and bring money to our area, which desperately needs it. They've done everything they can do to follow the rules. And when we think about what the government's job is, the government's job is to have rules that are fair and just, right? And so justice to the soul as food is to the body. That's a quote by Socrates, right? And so we say, this is a just thing. Springfield followed all the rules, and we should get our casino. Other areas of the state shouldn't vote it down because they are not going to get any of the money. I think we're in a great location, and people are very excited about what's going to happen in this city in the next couple of years. It's going to bring a lot of jobs. We can bring a new visitor center into the area. There's going to be a lot of small business development. We're in a perfect location. We have a lot of people driving through here going skiing who are going to stop and gamble. And we have a lot of people who come from, Western New York and Ohio who come through and want to go to the ocean. They're going to stop in Springfield. And so that's the good part about a casino. The difficult part is when people become addicted or when they have multiple addictions. I stopped in this small town in Nevada once when I was traveling with my wife, Jean, and we stopped just to get a soda because it was a hot day, and we saw a man playing blackjack, and he lost $5,000 in the time it took us to buy a soda and leave. It was one of the saddest things I ever saw. I'll remember it my whole life. And so when I look at casinos, my goal, my responsibility as a state senator is to make sure that when people get in trouble with gambling, there's services, that they can call somebody, they can talk to somebody, that they don't have to say, well, there's no one I can talk to about this, I'm on my own. No, my job is to make sure there is someone there so that Springfield residents do not get in trouble with the casino. Now, personally, there's a couple of casinos in Connecticut, and I've never been to them. I keep telling myself, I should go down there to see some music because they have a lot of great entertainment. I've never found myself going. I imagine I'll be going to the casino in Springfield, and I'm looking forward to the entertainment. But for people who don't have money to lose, it's just not a good idea. And so I think the majority of people in Springfield who have a dream in life that they're working towards, they're not going to waste their money on gambling. And I've seen too many people lose a lot of money on scratch tickets, and I don't understand it, but I think we'll get services in place. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. We're just about at the 1 o'clock hour. I'm going to ask a question now and hold the candidates to fairly brief answers. If there are people here who would like to come to the microphone and ask a question, why don't you get in position now, and we'll get to you in just a couple of minutes. My question now to the candidates, we talk ballot questions. Let's talk ballot question 1, indexing the gas tax to the rate of inflation. Good idea or bad idea? And we start with Mr. Saunders.
Awful idea. It is awful because it treats Western Mass worse than the rest of the state. When you think about anywhere west of 495, chances are you need a car to get where you're going. And things are spread out here more. Now, if you happen to live in Cambridge, it's great. Jump on the T. We subsidize that more than any state subsidizes their mass transit. And you don't have to pay the gas tax. You don't. But us out here, we're getting saddled with it again. I'm going to be voting against indexing the gas tax for the repeal. But moreover, as legislators, we have to have the courage to stand up and take the votes we're going to take. If we need to raise taxes to pay for essential programs and services, we need to be able to take that vote, come back to our districts, look our constituents in the eye, and say, I had to raise your taxes because of A, B, and C. When we've had to in the town of Ludlow on the Board of Selectmen, for 7 years I've had to have that conversation. It's difficult, but it's essential. It's one of the most basic responsibilities a representative in your government has. And to take the easy way out by simply indexing the gas tax, increasing the tax every year without any type of responsiveness from your state senator is not only wrong, but it's cowardly.
Mr. Allen.
Thanks, Jim. I agree with Aaron Saunders. It's a good answer, and I agree with what he said. In addition to that, I would add to the fact that when you're managing a budget, I manage millions of dollars of budgets at Mass Mutual, I manage millions of dollars of budgets at the City Council in Springfield, that you need to be able to have prioritization possibilities. You need to be able to review your budget on an annual basis, things that are locked in. In Springfield, we have $100 million or so locked in with health care reimbursements, with pension reimbursements, with debt service. Our loans alone are $40 million a year, what we pay in loans in Springfield. So you need to say you're going to do something and just lock in and say this is what it's going to be for a period of years in time does not make any sense, because you need more freedom as you're reviewing your budgets and seeing things are going up and down in different parts of the economy and different parts of the city. You need to be able to adjust. And so I would be against it for the same reasons as Mr. Saunders, and also against it because you need the freedom to make decisions that make sense for that year when you're doing your budget review. Thanks.
Mr. Harrington.
Yeah, my answer will be very quick. Yes, I think it's not the right way to go to index it to no tax should be automatically going up every single year. So I would certainly be voting against it, and for the reasons previously stated. Number one, as a state senator, you need to stand up and be counted, and I will stand up and be counted. I will not attach any tax to an automatic increase.
Mr. Lachiusa.
Well, I guess I stand different than the other candidates in that I think that the taxes on gas is not going to be the thing that's going to break our backs. The price of gas keeps varying quite a bit. I can't understand the formula of exactly why, but we do know that the price of gas seems to go up and up and up and up. And so I don't see this gas tax being a critical element as far as people who use the car, who drive. Most people drive short distances are not going to be affected at all by this. We look at priorities in terms of budget, and so when we look at taxes, taxes can discourage certain things. And one of the things we're trying to discourage is people driving a lot. We're looking at a global warming situation, and the more people drive, the more carbon dioxide gets in the system, and it's going to work against us. As a state, we are going to find some way to reduce our emissions from gas. We're going to look at our carbon footprints This is a small step in that direction, and so I support it. I think it's a green measure. I think it's going to be good for our environment. And our environment is important. We're going to look at changes in temperature and how it's going to affect us. We're talking about the seas, going up 10 feet, which is unbelievable to think that all these glaciers are melting and all that water from the glaciers are going to cause a big problem in the ocean. Those of you who may have the old-fashioned thermometers and you look at mercury and you look at how mercury rises, well, when water warms up, it just gets a little bit larger. It increases. And so when you look at something as big as the ocean and you say it's just going to get a little bit larger by a few degrees, we're starting to find some significant changes in this world. And so I think that, this kind of tax is a measure for a greener environment, and I support it.
Mr. Lesser.
Thank you, Jim. I'm against indexing the gas tax to inflation, and here's why. It's not fair to our families here in Western Massachusetts. We drive more than people in the Boston area, and we do not have adequate public transportation options. So if the price of gas goes up, there's no alternative for people to take trains or to take buses. We have a bus system, but it's woefully inadequate to the region's needs. So I don't support unfair taxation. We have very important and urgent infrastructure priorities that we need to invest in. I've spoken since the beginning of this campaign about high-speed rail. The way that we fund that, the way that we improve our bridges and our roads is by setting up a tax structure that's fair. Our middle-class families have been battered by an unfair tax structure for generations. Middle-class people in this state pay a higher portion of their income in taxes than the wealthiest people. Small businesses in our area pay a higher tax rate than the biggest companies in the state. That's not fair. That's what we need to change. Tim talked about budget priorities. He's right. It's important to balance budgets. It's important to match expenditures with receipts. The way we do that is by making sure that the revenue collection is fair. And indexing the gas tax to inflation is not fair for Western Massachusetts. And that's also how we need to make investments in our environmental programs. I am the environmental candidate in this race. I've been endorsed by the Environmental Action League of Massachusetts because they understand that our priority needs to be on making those investments to bring clean tech jobs, green jobs here to Western Mass, and to make the transition to less automobile usage. But the way we need to do it is in a fair way, and indexing the gas tax to inflation is not fair for our families here in Western Mass.
Thank you, sir. I don't believe anyone has come to either of the microphones in the audience, and that's fine. I'll keep checking, so if you change your mind, you come up with a question, head there. In the meantime, I'll ask more questions as we continue toward the 1:30 end of our session here today. Next question goes first to Mr. Allen. What about our senior citizens? They are a significant portion of the population of the first Hampden, Hampshire district. What would be your approach to addressing seniors' particular concerns and the state programs that impact them?
Well, I am very sensitive to senior citizens, and they are a larger and it's a growing part of our voting electorate, larger part of our district. And let me just say a couple things about my family legacy with this. My mother, who was on the board of just about every board in Springfield, was on the board of the Springfield Hobby Club when the Independence House and Seniority House were built in Springfield. So around the supper table, she would talk about things she did for the community, and senior issues were something she worked for. My father received those services. The last few years of his life, he spent at the Soldiers' Home. So I saw what matters, the types of things that matter from both sides, from what my mother did and the services my father received. On the Springfield City Council, I've consistently supported senior tax incentives, senior work-off plans, etc. We're about to build a senior center in Springfield. I've visited many senior centers in this campaign, and that the issues for seniors are very, very important, including prescription drugs and being careful to not charge too much for prescription drugs as we move to the Affordable Care Act, etc. So it's clear that seniors are such an important part of our population. We have many ways we can support them. I've continuously supported them, and will continue to do that in the Senate.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Harrington.
My parents still live in the same house that I grew up in. They've lived there since 1960 in the town of Ludlow, and they were both in their early 80s, and it's very difficult for them to get by now. The cost of everything, food, fuel, we talked about that. but most importantly is the cost of medicine. I mean, let's face it, when you get older, you start to rely on more and more medical care, and it's very, very difficult for them. I've made one proposal that I think would give seniors a very significant opportunity. Allow each city and town the opportunity to freeze the property tax rate when somebody turns 70 years old and if they're in their home. That would freeze the tax rate, whatever the tax rate is for that year, it freezes until the length that they stay in that house. They can budget easier that way. Right now, seniors can't budget. They assume their taxes are going to go up because it does, but they're trying to guess what that's going to be. If they knew what their tax rate was from the time they're 70 until the time they leave that home, they can budget that into their account. That would provide a significant savings for seniors. As everything else goes up, at least their property taxes would remain the same. Each town and city should be given the opportunity to vote on something like that and support it, but it needs to be fostered through the legislature first. That along with senior transportation. More and more people are becoming shut-ins because there's just not enough transportation opportunities around. I'm a member of the Council on Aging as a liaison in the town of Ludlow, and we talk about it all the time, and just getting seniors out of their house, getting them to the appointment, just getting to the store to get their necessities that they need to get through the day. We need more public transportation for senior citizens. Somebody who has worked their entire life deserves to be taken care of. This is one of the only cultures in the entire world that we don't take care of our seniors like other cultures do. They're our greatest resource. The senior abatement program that some towns have, that we have in Ludlow, is wonderful. Highly skilled individuals who have worked 60 years in a profession come and volunteer within the community, and they can write that off on their taxes. Those are great programs. Senior citizens are our greatest natural resource, and they need to be fostered.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Lachiusa.
Well, probably longer than some of my opponents have been alive, I've been concerned about issues with seniors. In 1983, I started a group for retiring veterans right down the street here on State Street near Main Street. I worked with the Veterans Administration at that point in time because, people need to talk to other folks who are in the same position they're in. And so we have senior centers which provide that resource. When people retire, they don't want their activity, they're used to an activity level up here, and then, they don't really want it to drop off to nothing. So when people retire, they want to have activities. And I'm kind of excited about how things are going to be in the future for my generation. I'm one of the baby boomers, and the baby boomers have changed retirement already, but they're going to change it significantly. They've changed everything else. They've changed music, they've changed theater, they've changed, you name it, we've touched it. It's changed. And so I'm very excited about the way things are going to go in the future. Now, being on a fixed income, I think that the legislature needs to respond to the needs of seniors. I think that they don't use a lot of resources from the community, and so if they're in a situation where they're being overtaxed, I think that's a problem. I think we should look at their money coming in and try to make adjustments so people can stay in their own homes. Seniors are happier when they're in their own homes, and we have a lot more programs like that. But we're going to see more and more community living and co-op situations that are going to happen in the future, and I'm going to support all of that sort of thing. And but the biggest thing for seniors is health, and the healthier people are, the better. And so we really need to have places for them to exercise, for people to exercise, and for we can't underestimate the importance of intellectual discussion and having forums, and and there's so much knowledge base that we have in our seniors. My wife has been working in nursing homes for the last few years, and she just comes back, amazed with the stories she hears and the wealth of knowledge in our senior population. And I hope that we can tap into that and they can share their knowledge with the rest of our community. Thank you.
And Mr. Lesser.
Thank you, Jim. This is a vitally important issue for our area because, as you mentioned, our senior citizen population in Western Mass is growing. And if we don't have a plan for how to manage that, it will become a very serious strain on the budget, and it will also become a strain on other resources. Our senior citizens deserve to be valued, they deserve our respect, and they're a tremendous resource for younger residents who have a lot to learn, frankly, from people who have a tremendous amount of life experience. So investing in our senior population is a top priority of mine. I put out an op-ed in the Republican recently about my plan, a concrete plan for how to invest in the senior population here in Western Massachusetts. And it involves 4 parts. First, we need to continue to invest in our local senior centers. We know that local senior centers improve quality of life. As Tom discussed, it allows for stimulation. It's more than just a place to hang out with friends. It's a place for access to health care, access to other resources. So investing in those senior centers is a top priority for me. We also need to reduce the cost of in-home care, make sure that seniors are able to stay in their homes as long as possible and afford to stay in their homes. We also need to cut down on the fraud and the abuse and some of the neglect we've seen perpetrated against senior citizens all too often. We hear about these scams and other abuses and frauds that have just become too commonplace. We need to work with law enforcement. We need to work with local community leaders to take that on. And finally, we need to do something about property tax relief. It's not fair. Again, I talked about fairness in our tax structure in another question. It's not fair that people who have worked their whole life and enter fixed incomes continue to see property taxes go up and up and up. That's not a fair way to collect revenue, and we need to figure out a way to give senior citizens the ability to stay in their homes as long as possible. So those are the 4 things I would like to focus on in terms of senior issues in the State House. And again, the key is putting a plan in place so that we're investing in our senior population and that we're getting the most from those who are entering their golden years in life.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Saunders.
Thank you, Jim. So at a previous debate, we were asked what our first bill would be that we file if elected, and mine was then and still is now property tax relief for seniors. And it's not because it's a politically popular idea or I picked it out of a hat. It's because on 7 years on the Board of Selectmen in Ludlow, I've seen the impact that increased property taxes have had on our seniors living on fixed incomes. It needs to stop. And it's not the only issue that affects our seniors. And it's not since the beginning of this campaign that I've been working on these issues. It wasn't more than a few years ago that if you reached a certain age and you weren't able to do a couple of things around the house the way that you might have been able to do a few years before, your only option was a nursing home if you didn't have family around. I worked with Senator Kondaris to put a personal care attendance bill together that revolutionized the way the Commonwealth of Massachusetts treats seniors, keeping them in their homes. That's not a plan, it's not an idea, it's real work. I was there at that table. I saw what it takes to get that job done. I know what it takes to get this job done.
Thank you, sir. And now I believe we do have a question in the access area. Go ahead with your question for our candidates, please.
Okay. Hello, my name is Sean, and I'm from Veritas Prep, and I was wondering how you could help struggling parents with their money.
I'll be honest with you, I had a very hard time hearing. Were we able to? Could you repeat it, please?
Okay. How can you help parents that are struggling with their money?
How can we help with the struggling economy and finances? Let's
Yeah.
talk about that. That would start with Mr. Harrington this round. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I think the question was, how do you help struggling families, parents with the economy and their funding? Okay. Well, that is the overarching question. That's something that my wife and I deal with every single day. You know, my wife, like as I mentioned, is a nurse at Bay State. I'm a small business owner. I work 2 jobs because I have to work 2 jobs. Because it's expensive to live in Massachusetts. It's expensive to live in the entire nation. But with property taxes, it gets very, very difficult. As the issue we just spoke about before with senior citizens, you know, this is what drives families. This is what keeps families together or drives them apart. One thing I've talked about along the campaign trail is that, you know, social services are wonderful when you need them. But all too often right now, we sometimes incentivize people not to work. I was along the campaign trail talking to a gentleman who manages a large store in the area, and he said he offered a young lady who was a single mom, and she was living in an apartment, and she was collecting state benefits, and he offered her a job for 22 hours a week. And she told him she couldn't accept the job because if she worked beyond 15 hours a week, she would lose all of her state benefits. And she so desperately wanted to get back into the workforce, number one, to provide for her daughter, but also to be a mentor for her daughter, so her daughter can see her going to work every day. That doesn't make any sense to me at all, that we incentivize people not to work. There needs to be a layer in there so that she can take that job for 22 hours a week, and then the state can make up a little bit of the difference. Because maybe that 22-hour job turns into 30 hours, and maybe that 30 turns into 40 hours with benefits now, and it's a significant job. She wanted to get back into the workforce, and she was a single young parent that wanted to do that. So there's a lot of people in that situation right now where we are not incentivizing people to get back into the workforce, and it's struggling for these young people because they want to do it, and it's very difficult. So parents who are struggling out there just to pay the bills, there are social programs in place, but the state needs to incentivize them to get into the workforce and just make up that difference rather than keeping them on those tax rolls.
Mr. Lachiusa.
I guess we go back to Veritas again, the truth. Because I also work 2 jobs, and so it is tough for families to have to work more than 1 job. When I look at the the struggles families are under, I used to work at a career center. I consulted to about 6 different career centers in Western Massachusetts, but I was right across the street here at FutureWorks. And so when people are underemployed or need to change jobs, I mean, we do have a series of career centers to help people, and they have workshops there, and that really can help parents make some good decisions about their career. If there's training that's needed, the state does help with some training. Unfortunately, training monies appear in July, and then by the end of the year they're gone. But I do think that families need to have some more support on this. The thing is with all of us is we have to figure out our budget, and we have to say what are our priorities. And our priorities in our budget are what we spend our money on. And families struggle with this, but even as candidates, we struggle with this. I mean, we've had a candidate in this race who has talked about the need for jobs in this area, how there aren't enough good jobs in this area, and that candidate is going to bring them in this area. And at the same time, that candidate has spent over $100,000 outside of this district. It doesn't matter, it doesn't weigh up. How do you get that? How do you spend over $100,000 out of the district and say, I don't understand why children need to move out of this area for good jobs? Maybe he can explain it to you. Thank you.
Well, it just happens by the luck of the draw. That candidate is next, Mr. Lesser.
Thanks, Jim, for that. It's Sean, right? So, Sean, you just saw an example of why your family feels like it's struggling and nobody's hearing them. Because we have a political system that focuses on scoring points against people who are engaged in an election instead of working hard on focusing on your family and how to solve your family's problems. You have this promise from me. If I'm in the state Senate, I'm going to focus every day on how to help your family and your parents, because I do understand what it's like. My father is here right now. He's a doctor now in Holyoke, a family practice doctor. He didn't start that way. He grew up in a project in Brooklyn. He worked as a taxi cab driver through school, worked his way through school. My mother grew up in a 3rd-floor walk-up apartment in New York's Little Italy. She shared a bed with her grandmother until she was 18 years old. She also worked her way through school little by little. Her father was a dock worker in the Brooklyn waterfront. They taught me that if you put your head down and work hard, that anything is possible. But Sean, as you pointed out, that promise, that opportunity is breaking down. And part of why it's breaking down is because we have a system on Beacon Hill that focuses on attacking other candidates instead of solving problems. Here's my plan. Here are my ideas for how to help you and your family. We need to invest in our infrastructure. The economy is growing just to our east and just to our south. The way we improve on that and get that growth here is by investing in our infrastructure, getting a high-speed rail line here. I'm the only candidate that's talked about that the entire campaign. We know that Western Mass has a leg up on manufacturing jobs, high-tech manufacturing. That's been a historic area of growth for us. We need to zero in on that. As I mentioned, STIC is ground zero for some of that path-breaking work. We need to build on what's worked, our job training programs, so that people can get a leg up, people can build for their futures, and people can have an opportunity. It's not going to happen if we stick to politics as usual. It's not going to happen if we have political leaders that attack each other instead of focusing dutifully on solving problems and focusing on your family. So Sean, thanks for bringing that up, reminding us why this debate is so important.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Saunders.
Thank you, Sean, and congratulations. You've now become a political pawn. And it's unfortunate, and I want to focus on your question, because there are a lot of families that are struggling in Western Massachusetts right now. The first thing that we can do, and it's being done now, is increasing the minimum wage. And that's going to have a ripple effect on a lot of the lower paying jobs that exist in Western Mass. And more often than not, families are struggling with their finances because their jobs don't pay enough to put a roof over their head, food on the table, clothes on their backs, themselves and their families. The second thing that we need to do, and this is one that hits home for me, is to make sure that healthcare stays affordable. I can't tell you how many families I've run into over the years who they're going along just fine until someone's health turns south. It has a devastating effect, and it's our responsibility to make sure that no one gets put into financial ruin because of health concerns. The third thing that we need to do is grow quality jobs here in Western Mass. And it's popular, political points of the whole thing to say, well, the Springfield's awful and everything's wrong. But the fact of the matter is that things are moving in the right direction. Not as fast as we want them to. But you look in this room, we got a room full of young, engaged people. That's Springfield moving in the right direction. We need to continue that growth with good quality, high-paying jobs so that as you graduate, you don't have to look to Boston or New York. You don't have to worry about getting on a train to get to work. But you can look right here in Springfield and Western Mass for quality employment. It's why I'm in this thing. It's what I want to fight for.
Mr. Allen.
Thank you, Jim. Sean, you asked an interesting question. It has a couple parts to it. Let me address the parent part first and the work part second. I ran the first parent workshops in Springfield as part of the Step Up Springfield initiative that I managed for a few years ago from 2006 to 2009. We did parent workshops. We went to Mass Mutual. We went to businesses all over the place. We ran workshops wherever we could to train parents as best we could in the things we thought they needed, how to parent, how to manage their money, etc. Those workshops eventually became the Springfield Parent Academy, which I'm proud to say I was part of the group to put that together. On the work side, it's clear that one of the things that helps parents the most is the money to run a decent life and not be scrambling constantly to pay the bills. So what have I done on that front? I grew up in a small business that was over 80 years in Springfield. Saw my grandfather employ hundreds of people over time in what I call a large small business. Then I went to Mass Mutual, where I managed and hired hundreds of people over time, saw the impact of a good job and a good work environment and a good work experience and what it can do for them, and being sensitive to employees and get their work done and also balance the pressures they had at home. I was proud of the fact that many of my employees were on mother's hours or part-time hours where they could do both things, could do their job well and also run their family well. On the city council, I've done some things to help with jobs here as well. We kept tight flex in this city when it was going to go to South Carolina. We worked with tax incentives, provided tax incentives to keep 100 jobs in Springfield. Smith & Wesson bought a company in New Hampshire, Thompson Rifles. We worked with them in providing tax incentives for them to hire Stick and Putnam graduates, over 200. It ended up that they hired over 300 people. I helped get those jobs here and keep those jobs here. Custom Carbide, which is right on Dwight Street in Springfield, moved from St. James Avenue to Dwight Street. These are the effects of tax incentives, which keep businesses here, which provide jobs for people. And when they have jobs and they have decent employment and enough money to raise a family, it takes a lot of the stress out of the home environment, provides an environment where people can grow and develop as they should. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you all, gentlemen. We have reached the point where there isn't time for another round of questions. We're not quite at 1:30, but we are going to take time, first of all, and we ask you stay with us for another couple of minutes. We want to thank our candidates one by one. Tim Allen, Chip Harrington, Tom Lachiusa, Eric Lesser, and Aaron Saunders. These are 5 good people who've invested their year in democracy, and that's a great, great thing to do. Let's give them a hand. Thank you.